Hello world, welcome to the Women of BSV. We are delighted to have as our guest today, Darren Kellenschwiler, aka Deggen. He is a leader in the social fabric of the Bitcoin network, founder of Baymail, and software engineer at Nchain. Welcome to the conversation, Deggen.
Thanks so much, Rory. Appreciate it. Very ultra flattering.
Yes.
I don't know,
not at all.
Leader in the Bitcoin social space or something like that. That seems a bit much. I have been on camera in this space for a year.
You did start the London Bitcoin Meetup.
This is true. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
and
in fact,
you
yes.
were the point person at the London conference meetup. So everyone had to meet you, and I was excited.
That was a great meetup. Probably my favorite meetup ever still.
Yeah.
And yes, if any of your audience are in London or near enough where they would like to be an organizer of the London Bitcoin Meetup, I guess that's the first thing you should get in touch with me about, because I need to pass the torch for the meetup organizer. The Block Dojo guys have been doing a couple of successful events, but yeah, we need more local people now that I'm out of London.
And you were telling us that you've gone to Austin, Texas.
Yes.
What made you pick there? I mean, I think it sounds like a wonderful place to live. I'd be quite tempted myself, but tell us why you moved there.
Sure. So I moved to Austin because, gosh, well, I've been trying to move to the States because my wife got relocated to the States. She's American, so it's very easy for her to relocate. I've been applying for a green card for the best part of 2 years now. It was just granted, and by the time it was granted, we had figured out what our US plan was. She's opening an office with her company in Austin, and I loved remote during COVID. I actually went remote right before all the COVID stuff started. So I'm one of those voluntary isolating types. I quite like working alone, honestly. So it didn't really matter where I went, but Austin just sounded exciting. And it's also like the most popular city to move to, I think, on the planet right now. Loads of people are moving from California and the East Coast. So it's got a lot of great entrepreneurial, new world building people.
No, that's true. And Miami as well seems to be a bit up and coming at the moment, doesn't it? Particularly in BSV.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
so
no.
That was part of the draw. I mean, the weather's nice. I grew up in Scotland, and it's November right now, and it feels like a Scottish summer. Honestly, it's like 15 to 20 degrees every day, barely any clouds. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Very different.
So can we go back a little bit and kind of like get some history of yourself? Because you were born in Scotland. Were you born in Scotland?
No. So I was born in Switzerland,
okay.
Solothurn, which is right in the center of Switzerland in the Berner Oberland Valley. But I moved when I was 2 to Scotland, which is where my mother is from. And I grew up there. It's Aberdeenshire, so the northeast of Scotland, the crispy, cold, not too rainy part of Scotland. And I moved to Glasgow, which is the very rainy, slightly warmer part of Scotland. Lived there for 12 years.
Did you ever try a battered Mars bar?
I did, actually, yeah.
What's that?
Well, a battered Mars bar is quite famous in Glasgow, at least I know, because my sister-in-law's family are Glaswegian. But literally, it's a Mars bar, and it's covered in batter, and then it's deep fried, and then you eat this battered Mars. I've never had one. I really would like to try one, but I think they just sound a bit too sweet and sickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend eating a whole one now. As a child, I think you can cope, and I was like a student when I tried it. I wouldn't try it today because I'd be afraid to get diabetes immediately. It's an extreme sport eating those things, I think.
Yeah, just have a heart attack on the spot, I think. Yeah.
So how did you get into programming and stuff? I mean,
that's entirely the responsibility. I mean, the whole impulse to do that was BSV related. Really? I actually only learned proper asynchronous JavaScript from Unwriter and B.Eng, who is the lead developer of MoneyButton.
Oh.
So I just in discussions in Slack and Telegram with those two, and to be fair, there are like maybe 10 other people that contributed in terms of like people I just asked questions while I was playing around with the early sort of planarium code that I, learned from. And I suppose there was also just like self. Most people are in this industry, I think, are mostly self-taught, I would imagine, because programming languages evolve so quickly that even if you have a degree in it, 10 years later, you'll be well out of date with the sort of modern idioms used in even the same programming language. So yeah, I just sort of learned from people who I assume have had real software developer jobs and had an interest in BSV. And they started making these tools. And then I learned from them, from documentation on moneybutton.com and so on. So that really turned me into a developer from previously coming from marketing and like running video production companies is what I was doing before.
Oh, is that what you did?
Yeah.
So you're quite creative then anyway then?
Yeah, I think there's a creative element to sort of software development still.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We joke all the time that the hardest part of the job is coming up with names for everything. Just naming all of this new technology.
Certainly for Craig Wright, it seems to be a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's not his favorite bit, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think autists are sort of famously bad at naming things, probably for like other neuronormative folk to understand. So that is a problem. I think a lot of us would like to burn it all to the ground and start again. Wallet, miner, simplified payment verification. It's not simplified. It's actually sort of convoluting the current systems, at least, because no one understood it for 10 years.
I'm not sure many people do still, actually. I tried to explain it to my son the other day and I messed it up. So
yeah.
Well, what's a better name for it then?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's hard to come up with better names, but what is it really? In my mind, it's, well, we've been discussing calling it a transaction and ancestry, because that's sort of what you're sending is not just the parents of a transaction. If you imagine a sort of, well, technically speaking, it would be a DAG, right? A sort of UTXO DAG going off in complicated directions. You're sending the parent transactions, you're sending their parent transactions, so grandparent and their parents transactions, so great grandparents and so on and so forth. So the whole thing as a blob to me is ancestry. Yeah, so and you're using the ancestry to verify payment.
I'm not a native English speaker, but I'm very good with words. So I can, if you just throw me a lot of words, I can try to come up with something, and if it's not right, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of what might be useful, honestly, is perhaps if we had a Finnish word that describes it, and in English we could use that as a loan word, because a lot of the time what we find is we're colliding, so we have the same word for a few different things. And so it becomes unclear because it's which of those things. When you say I'm sending a payment, do you mean you're sending a raw transaction in hex format? Or are you saying that you're sending the raw transaction in hex form with metadata about who's sending it and who you're sending to? Or are you talking about the peer-to-peer paymail protocol? Are you talking about the peer-to-peer WebSocket? Are you talking about a peer channel between two nodes that doesn't even use internet protocol? Like what's happening here? It gets very confusing. So we need some way of differentiating.
You can just throw words at me and I can throw you back one word.
Right. That sounds good. I don't know if you want me to sort of describe what it is, and we can do it live.
Yes, that's fun.
Yeah.
I have whiteboards ready.
Okay. Yeah. So what we're talking about? We're talking about upgrading all of the sort of applications on Bitcoin to start using this thing we don't have a name for, such that when you send a transaction to someone, you're proving that every input to that transaction is already on the blockchain. And the way we do that at the moment relies on the person receiving actually having a whole Bitcoin node software running where they're mining blocks. I mean, the likelihood that they actually have enough mining power to mine a block is close to zero, but for the sake of argument, all of these companies that are currently working with processing lots of transactions, that's what they would need. They would need the whole blockchain, and they would need to verify that all the inputs are actually within that blockchain before they can accept the payment. So
does it look like this or like that?
So when you say does it, what do you mean by it?
The ancestry.
The ancestry. Oh, okay. So it looks more like the second one. So that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
So it's called a directed acyclic graph. So you have what are the properties of a DAG? You could probably Google that, but basically you have the only thing you can have a complicated graph of different nodes, all, or in this case transactions, all sort of paying their outputs to different new transactions, and the only thing you can't have is the cyclic part. No cycle, so you can't have. So
it doesn't go back again.
Doesn't go back. You can't give birth to your own parents, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
So to keep the family analogy, you can't do that, but you can.
Yes.
You can have multiple children, and they can have multiple children, and so on and so forth.
Yes. Oh,
and then your children can have children with other people's children, and they might be several generations apart, and depending on how long the generation is, and
right.
So it's kind of like a family tree.
Yeah.
So it's like putting it like in easy words to people to understand. Would it be like I'm not putting up the word right now, but I'm just playing with the words. Would it be like ancestry transaction? I had it, but I lost it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean,
it's a bit like a
family tree.
flowchart, but like a family. So.
Well, flowcharts have a different property in that they can loop. So
that's true.
Yeah,
this can't loop.
They usually do, in fact. Yes.
Okay. How do you say great grandmother in Finnish?
Different ways. Other grandmother will be mad if I say iso mummo, but the other one is say iso mummi. So
mummy.
Mummy. It sounds so. It's a Moonman graph. There we go.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Moonmans?
Oh my.
Yeah. I know the Moonmans.
There you go. So you've got a picture to go with it.
Excellent.
Problem solved.
But I'm very bad at speaking English. I'm very good at when I write them down and play with the words, because I write poems in English and actually rap songs also. That's a secret,
cool.
by the way, and not anymore. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I'm good with the words, but not like this.
No, but you make a good point though, Korppi. I mean, literally borrowing a word from another language wouldn't be a bad idea, actually, in this case. And I like Moomins.
But would it be a moving tree or a moving graph? I mean, the way you describe it to me is very much like an ancestral tree, because you've got you've got your parents, and then everything comes off from them, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more. Is that right? I mean, it's just
So
eventually.
So I suppose it would be the family tree of an asexual creature, in that each parent can produce children of its own accord without the need for a partner. So that's the only difference between family trees and directed acyclic graphs.
Family tree of like a
frog Or,
Clownfish?
Clownfish, maybe.
No, like a what was it? Like a nematode or what is that?
Like Godzilla.
Tree.
No,
Tree
the planaria
is
thing.
very
Doesn't that
symbolic
self?
in many cultures, so I think that would work.
Anyway, you'd be amazed at how long that we discuss names.
Yeah, I bet.
Versus code things. Like the
can
code
imagine
for
it's
it's not that complicated.
So you can understand the code better than you can. Yeah, shorten it in something
That is
simple.
the struggle.
I'm gonna
of the
try
artist,
to
isn't it?
explain what I mean, because
Sorry.
trees are formed from roots, and then comes the tree,
Trunk?
and then the branches.
Yes.
So it's like a network, and underneath the earth, there's a network of roots and mushrooms and everything, and they all connect. So it's
Certainly
huge.
the
Mycelium.
mushroom thing, exactly. Mycelium has been used a lot in the sort of Bitcoin world before, right? That was a wallet at some stage back in the old days.
Yeah, I remember, what's his name? You know, the funny guy. Oh, you know, the great thinker. Daniel.
Daniel
Oh,
Kravitz.
Daniel Kravitz,
Yeah.
right? The funny guy.
I remember he did an episode on that.
Anyway, my point is I would go with roots because they are like the ancestry of us all.
Ah, yes.
Root.
So it's below ground, not
Yes.
above. I see what you mean.
That's a good thing. That's a good thought.
It's interesting that you called it after a mushroom as well. Say mycelium.
The thing is that
General
mycelium
network, isn't it?
is the underground fungi network, whereas what we call mushroom is just the protuberances that come above ground.
That's right. So it's a communicating network.
So that's
Isn't
what
it?
Korppi was saying then. Because everything happens from the underground first, and the root. Everything happens from the root.
Yeah, and the whole thing is called fungi.
Fungi.
Fun guy.
Interesting.
There's probably
Funny
something
guy.
you could make of all of that, isn't there?
And this is how science happens too, is through observation.
Yes.
And people in conversation, or an individual alone in deep thought of looking at something in nature. Even Da Vinci or Einstein, all these famous legends of innovation, they often would look around and think about these things too. So it's okay for us as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes it makes it easier to understand things as well if you can compare it to something in nature that you already kind of understand. It brings the whole thing into focus for you, doesn't it?
And just at Thanksgiving yesterday, talking about the industry, you know, people are not that interested as much as we are. So it's something that does need catchy words and visual words so that we can clearly and concisely relate with everyone everywhere.
Yeah, but I wonder why that is. Have you ever inspected why you are so fascinated with this?
Yes, I think it's something that is exciting.
There's got to be more to it than that, though, hasn't
Why?
there? Yeah. I mean, for me, it came from just like a worry that basically we'd reached the end of a kind of an economic era, and there was going to be kind of a nasty crunch at the end, and that Bitcoin might be like a bridge into a new kind of financial era for me. What about you, Deggen? What made you so interested? Was it the engineering aspect?
Well, I don't know. You'd think so, but I mean, there's loads of engineering problems that you could go out and attempt to put your shoulder under and solve and help create sort of products and services on top of or related to. I suspect it is the fact that it's sort of new money, and I think that there's some element of a sort of survival instinct that kicks in when money as a sort of general topic is touched upon. You know, it's one of those sacred things that you're not supposed to talk about over Thanksgiving, for example, because it's so tied to whether or not you live or die in a modern economy, you know, for most people at least. Obviously, there are those who are self-sufficient, grow their own vegetables and hunt their own meat. to this day. But it's certainly in a city like London or any big city, obviously we rely on money as a source of, well, everything, shelter and food. So I think that's immediately, there's some part of the brain that's like, danger, must pay attention. And that, I think that's the orienting reflex, right? You're sort of naturally...
that survival of the fittest, isn't it? So, like,
yeah.
I mean, my interest really was born out of actually being harassed on Facebook by people that I didn't want to be harassed by. And then, like, I saw this pay-per-click advertising, and that was kind of also a sense of where it was born from. But it was more the understanding of being able to take control of your own data and not having a company like, for example, Facebook, you know, you uploading something and them actually then saying, well, this is now my copyright. Well, actually, no, it's my copyright. And you've literally just stolen it off me to be able to use your platform. So I really liked, like, the finance background. I understood the financial side of it, you know, completely, thinking, well, that's great because it's a triple ledger accounting system, and that will basically show you straight away if anybody's doing anything fraudulent. So that was a great. But then the data side of it was like, well, this means I can control my data and somebody else doesn't control my data. And if that's the case, then I can make money off my data instead of them making money off my data. Sure. So that was one of the big selling points for me. And then, you know, I just listened to Craig talk and I was like, oh God, you make so much sense. You're so passionate here. And that was another kind of pull, do you know what I mean? But it was also, I do see, because like I'm into metaphysics, and I do see this metaphysical element to it as well in a bigger picture and the scale of things, and especially the fact that Craig studied theology, and it kind of, and the Genesis block and all of that. So that I found really fascinating, because it was like, oh, big blocks, Genesis, let's go back to the back to a kind of resetting the blockchain and start again from the Genesis block. And it just coincided with so much in the Bible. It was like, but I don't want to get into a religious conversation, but that was also a part of it for me as well, because that kind of ancient, like, history really fascinates me. And it kind of just, like the Library of Alexandria as well, instead of burning stuff down and books being burnt, at least there's some way to store stuff which hopefully would last for another 150 years or so without somebody being able to damage it, and then other people in the future would be able to see that. So maybe that's a bit, but mine was from so many different elements. And then it also, like, well, I don't understand this code, I want to understand it a bit more. So that was also for me, it's like, I need to, you know, it's all very well people going this, that and the other, but actually I don't understand programming side of it, so I want to understand more of the programming side of it as well. So that was
like a sort of drive to understand this novel new thing that just doesn't look like anything else, right? Or striving for knowledge, do you know what I mean? I feel that a lot. Definitely.
What about you, Ray? Because Ray does programming as well. I'd be interested to know how Ray sees that.
I was attracted to it by, I grew up on things with open source, with like using Linux. And there's a lot of projects that are open that you can work on with BSV and connecting to different APIs. And I think that's really neat. And then earlier we were talking about like, you know, family trees. And I think that's very close to how the transactions are. And even if you look at some of the NFTs that are generated, they are very close to that, because they start as like a, you know, the origin. And then you have like parents that can create new, you know, like kids as transactions. And I think all that's, you know, need to learn, you know, more about, but it's also very complicated with certain, you know, things, especially if trying to, you know, have different wallets and like holding the same thing, where basically right now, like we're working on a project for NFTs. So that's why I'm talking about all this, but we're trying to like figure out how to display certain things and different wallets. But yeah, just mainly the open source part. And I do have a question for Deggen. Do you prefer stuff that's like proprietary, like closed, or do you like to share your work?
That's a great question. I think as a developer, like a sort of freelance developer, I definitely prefer open source because it means that I can sort of participate in improving libraries that I'm using, or write my own libraries and publish them. Over the last few years, because I'm such a new developer, I found that the things that I wrote, I mean, Baymail is a great example of this. So Baymail is closed source. But the reason is not a philosophical one. The reason was because the code was so bad at first that I didn't want to admit that in the very early days. Bearing in mind, this was the first application I'd ever built.
Wow.
So it was bad. And then, you know, I cleaned it up over time. And after a while, I was like, okay, I can start to let other developers see this. So I think there's an element of perfectionism in my sort of like, I want it to be perfect before anyone sees it.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that, Deggen. I'm so pleased to hear you say that, because it like, I think a lot of how, you know, we're trying to develop apps ourselves at the moment, and you know, it's very off-putting to think like everybody's got this nailed down and they know what they're doing and stuff, and to think that someone who I, you know, look up to, I've been looking up to you for the last few years since I've known you, wasn't that confident either in the beginning, is actually really reassuring and quite encouraging.
Yeah, and without throwing any of my colleagues under the bus, I found that like the more teams that I got involved in, the more I realized that no one has any idea what they're doing. Like, no one.
Is that why you started the Bitcoin meetups as well?
So honestly, that was purely strategic. So the reason I started and to be fair, I didn't start that meetup, but it was strategic to take over from the people who had previously been running it, because so getting into software development is not super easy, because everyone is like, okay, we need 5 years experience in this language that's only existed for a year. That's the classic sort of developer joke, isn't it? You're expected to have way more experience than is even possible. So, you know, especially coming from a sort of marketing and a small business management background, suddenly coming in as some gung-ho JavaScript developer was just like not going to happen for me. So I figured out a way to get into a sort of secure job in London, working for, it was a technology company, but my role was more on the B2B sales side, more to do with, it was kind of like sales engineering for video marketing solutions, because I know the video production stuff from my past. So starting that, running those meetups was strategic for me in that I knew I wanted to be a software developer in the Bitcoin space, but I had no way to do that because I didn't know anyone. So I was like, okay, the best thing I can do is just advocate, you know, put all my chips, you know, all in one bet. I think BSV is the one that works. And I was just like, I just want to be close to the center of that network as possible. And so that's why I was like, look, I have no idea how to run events. And frankly, I hate meeting lots of people simultaneously. It's not something that's natural to me. So, but I was just like, look, if I'm going to change my whole life around this thing, I'm just going to have to take that bet.
You're all in, sort of thing.
Yeah. And best decision. You know, I really met, I mean, all my new friends I met through that decision essentially. So, and yeah, would never go back.
Brilliant.
Yes, and I really appreciated how warm you were. Even though you were this authority figure at that event, you were very warm and welcoming to everyone, no matter who they were. They could be brand new. And that made me really happy that night. Yes, I thought, wow, this is a great scene. You know, the people are genuine. Yeah. At least the people that are in leadership are very genuine, it seems. And lots of the other people too. So I think that's an important part of leadership, is to be inclusive like that
Totally.
in just an individual way.
Well, I think that came naturally as part of the sort of design and vision for BSV because of, I mean, a lot of the influence was obviously from Jamie Nguyen and the way that he sort of framed things for a broader audience. because prior to his,
he set the tone, didn't he?
Yeah, he did set the tone since Genesis, and that certainly had an influence on me. I mean, not to mention Calvin Ayre and all of the massive amount of media and support he's had for the whole industry. Like, you know, if it weren't for those guys, I don't know where I'd be right now.
Definitely,
yes, Steve Shatters too.
Yeah, Steve's one of the first I met. So when I ran the first event that I was sort of in charge of, this sort of split event with BCH and BSV going different ways. There was one group of sort of libertarian guys that were friendly enough that were taking over the BCH side of things, and I was taking over the BSV side of things, and that's when I met Steve and Craig. No, I met Craig earlier, but that's when I met Steve. And yeah, he's just super down to earth. You would never know if you just met him that, like, oh yeah, this guy's like absolutely critical. All the stuff that we're all building on, like, if it weren't for him and his team, like, none of this would work. So yeah, he's very chill, very cool, and his wife as well is amazing.
Good people. Having dreams about Bitcoin in the middle of the night, and then has to get up in the middle of the night and start whiteboarding.
Oh yeah, he did tell that story, didn't he, on stage last conference? Yeah.
So what's your journey been like since that first meetup then?
So the first meetup that I attended was maybe a month or two before that. So it was November actually. So was that November 2018? Probably. And Jamie Wynn asked me, what do you do? And he put me on the spot, and Craig was standing here, Jamie Wynn was standing here. I was like, oh my God, I just met the CEO of Nchain, this company I've idolized for, you know, since I heard of it. And they were hiring C++ developers at the time. I was nowhere near capable of joining them at that time. But I said, oh, well, I do B2B marketing stuff, but I really want to get into Bitcoin development. And he said, wrong answer. You should have said, I want to work for you. And I mean, he was right. And eventually, you know, now I'm working for Nchain, which is great. So got there eventually. But so the journey from those 2 points, right, meeting him and being like, oh, damn, I should have done that differently. You know, I just kept getting myself more involved and speaking to people like you who are sort of genuinely interested in sort of helping improve this technology and, you know, moving us all towards a better world as we see it. And you know, there's this sort of unifying aspect of the technology that helps us all sort of orient in the same direction, roughly speaking. You know, there's a philosophy to it, sort of honesty and so on. So I just tried to speak with as many people as possible that were like-minded, learn from them. You know, there's almost certainly going to be 10 people in any room in a BSV discussion that you have loads to learn from. Yeah. I just picked up little bits here and there, wisdom, little nuggets of wisdom from all these people, and put them into practice. And I mean, if I didn't have the wife that I have, that has a very stable, secure job that allowed me to just quit after we got married, I can't believe she let me do that. But here we are. So I, quit my job and was a full-time Bitcoin research and developer for a year, earning nothing. Yeah, I mean, I've started businesses in the past and earned nothing for a year in the past. You know, if you build up the savings, you can do it. And I'd recommend that if you ever have the opportunity to just follow your heart, kind of thing. And that's Baymail came out of the first 2 months of that, is just doing what I thought was the right thing to do at that time. So. Yeah. And
it made a heck of a splash. I mean, I think it was an amazing project. It makes me realize why your ad was so good if you're a videographer as well.
Right. Yeah, I had that.
It was a very good ad,
I thought. I could explain what it was about.
Do you want to explain what Baymail is?
Yeah, sure. I get that it's not as heavily used as it originally was, I don't think, anymore. But so what Baymail is, it was supposed to be an incremental improvement on email, which everyone knows and understands. In the background, it uses the Paymail system that had recently, literally a few months prior, been sort of designed and implemented by well, Nchain and Money Button and Pancash and UX all sort of jumped on board, part of the Wallet Workshop, which is the precursor to the Bitcoin Association's Technical Standards Committee. So it was all just like a problem solving. So anyway, what it allowed was domains to talk to each other in a sort of Bitcoin overlaid language, such that you could address specific keys in Bitcoin wallets between two different domains. And so what I then realized, and many other people realized this prior to me, is that you can send messages to these keys. If you encrypt a message to these keys and literally just send it from domain to domain. And at the time, what everyone was doing is the op return thing, where they actually are putting data on chain and then reading it back off chain in an app. So the first implementation of Baymail was just like, if I write a message and I say to Diddy at wallet.com, I can put it on chain and only Diddy can read it, because she can just pick it up and she can decrypt it because it's encrypted to her Paymail key, but nobody else can. And so I just played around with that, and in a day just put a sort of basic email generate, email creation, message writing, single page thing. And I put that single page on chain, actually. So I probably have the original Baymail on chain somewhere. You could probably look it up, and I don't know whether it still works, but it's there. And the response to that was everyone's just jumping on it, just like, this is amazing. Yes, we should do this kind of thing. And I developed all sorts of things prior to that, like, a video platform for sharing short films. And because in my past, that's what I'd spent my free time doing, is making short films at weekends with colleagues and then publish them on YouTube. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could have like an online 48-hour film competition or something like that? And
yes,
it could all be published through this platform where the prize winners get some Bitcoin, and you have to sign with Paymail so we know who all the owners are, and then you could maybe pay money to watch this movie, and all the money is just instantly split up into the producer, the director, the camera operator, the lighting guys, all the actors would get their cut and so on, and it would all be on chain and therefore, honest. Because having worked in film production for a while, it's like that money can disappear and the producers can run off with it, and there's normally no recourse for you have some contract that nobody adheres to, as long as it's not too much money. It's not worth getting lawyers involved and so on. Anyway, total tangent. So that's what I was doing.
That is very important. That's a big opportunity. Is that
sure? No, I think so. And there's a guy in LA who still works on that.
Ted.
Ted. Yeah. Ted. I haven't spoken to Ted in ages. But I love that guy.
He's flying around on Twitter. He did promise me that he will come on, because he did my movies and my music, and he is working on that still. And I think he does a lot with Wyoming Film Federation, or whatever they're called, but he's definitely in Wyoming, because they've got a very friendly crypto like laws and stuff.
Great.
But that's really interesting. What's the name of the YouTube channel? Is it still up? Can we still see those shorts? And are you going to do anything in the future with it? Are you continuing with it?
Well, I've considered it now, because my spare time has always been about Bitcoin, and now that that's my sort of career, maybe I could get back into that as just a hobby. Especially now I'm in the States and it doesn't rain anymore, and you can actually go outside and film stuff. So
yes, and lots of artists there in Austin.
Yeah.
We could do with a Streamanity competitor.
See, I built one actually. I built one for doing these. It was called Luft Network. In fact, it's probably still up. So Luft Network. Please don't use it, because
how's it spelled?
Look. But it was built on. It is up. It was built with the idea that, I think the Bitcoin Association ran a bunch of events online, and that's what the London Bitcoin Meetup was going to be moving towards when all the lockdowns started happening. And I was like, this sucks. Why are we using like ancient technology? Because I have some experience in video engineering, so I'm like, this codec is old. Why are we using this? daft platform for boomers. And I was like, actually, what we want to do is, use this new, what we're using just now, which is WebRTC, I would imagine, connecting computer to computer, and then there's just some server listening to the whole stream, putting it together. So I learned AWS sort of video encoding stuff and built Lift Network to try and allow people to produce content and then split up the funds. And as I was building that, RelayX on StreamAnti, we were like, oh, we'll do that as well. They had similar ideas. So, the only thing they didn't do is live. And so I was going to be the live platform for sort of Bitcoin streamers. But
you need to finish that.
You definitely.
I know. I was this close to being finished. I need to replace the video player. And then ELAS came in and we're like, we want to buy Baymail, we want to buy Roundesk, and we want to hire you as our CTO. And I was like, okay,
fair enough.
Wow, great. Yes, I was well impressed with Roundesk too.
Yeah, I like
came
Roundesk.
out just after the London conference 2 years ago.
That's
and
right.
I felt a little intimidated to say anything on it, but I remember looking at it and looking at other people that had posted on it.
I really like the visual aspect of it, of being able to make a little graphic that showed your skills.
Sure, yeah, because that's what it was all about from my perspective. It was just like, you need to find people that can fill in your graph.
Yeah.
Because you need all of at minimum, all of those attributes to sort of create some successful app or business. I'm certainly missing some of them and need people to help fill my gaps. So.
I can't help but feel you've got several viable businesses that just need more marketing.
Ironically, marketing is something that I didn't do a huge amount of because it was just so.
Well,
much
it's
more
just a
interested
question
in
of sort of throwing money at it, isn't it? A lot of the time. I mean,
sounds like you didn't have the time either. Once that
No. Time was certainly a problem. Because I was working with some guys who are now in Austin as well, actually, on Observe. So I was doing their sort of graphic design and did their logo, and I was doing the front end sort of look of that site, the first version of it at least. I think they moved to an app now, I was working with them and trying to build Lift and maintaining Baymail and Roundesk, and I was trying to stack up. So
yeah.
And I have this image from what Korppi said of a seed that sprouted roots. So you have all of these projects that you've created, and then they've sprouted, and it's not over yet. It's still early days. It's just been 2 years, and we've all been pretty much holed up at home. So as we go out and have more of these meetups, we can get more people interacting and using different products. So don't despair. Just keep going forward. That's what I say.
Saplings are
good
growing.
sentiment.
Yes.
So for people that don't know though, like, what was that thing that you both talked about? I wasn't aware of this at all. This
Lift.
Can you explain? No, the other one. No, the other one.
Roundesk.
That one.
Oh,
okay.
Can you explain what Roundesk is for people? Oh,
shall I pull it up in
Please
a
do.
window?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Do you want me to explain it?
Yeah, you explain it.
Yeah.
I'll show it.
Okay, so great. Roundesk, the idea for Roundesk was partly what you were talking about in terms of an alternative to Facebook. This is more of an alternative to, obviously isn't working very well.
Bugger.
An alternative to LinkedIn originally was the idea. So the thinking was to allow people to manage their sort of professional profile in a Bitcoin specific place. And if you go to connect in the menu at the top left, go to connect, that'll show you this sort of, apparently it won't.
Different circles. Yes, there were all the different circles and connections, I remember.
Yeah, try logging out, Ruth. There's probably some token that's been sitting there if you haven't been on it for a while. At the bottom left there's a login.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you log in with your money button. The part of the reason that I think that we still need to improve on the sort of ecosystem of apps in this space is because the third-party services that are required in terms of the wallets, I don't think are adequate anymore. I think that Twetch used the right model where they actually have the wallet built into the domain. And perhaps even more correct would be Ryan X. Charles's recent updates where he's like, well, actually, we should have domain-based wallets where we're running things on our own host that we have control over. And that way, no third party needs to be relied upon. Because they update code. They don't necessarily tell everyone that's made apps using Money Button, and things like that will break unexpectedly because if they make changes in their code, like if we don't know, we can't update to comply with it or whatnot. So I think that's what probably happened there. But
there's a lot of people on here. I mean,
there's such a terrific resource, actually.
Yeah, it's a good place just to find people who have been in this space for a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
You know, if only it worked.
Yeah, if only it was stable.
Yeah,
and it's not doing bad, but I think it's rendering a lot,
years.
isn't it? Because it's a really long page. Maybe if you split it up into several pages rather than an infinite load or whatever.
Where are the pictures coming from? Are those coming from their profile image in Money Button?
So most of the images are coming from BitPic, which was an Unwriter idea, and I suppose Roundesk was partly just an extension of that, where you can associate. So BitPic is where you upload an image to the blockchain, and you say that this image is associated with this paymail, and then in other apps, what you can do is look up a BitPic URL with paymail, and it automatically finds that on-chain data and pulls it in as an image. So that any app you use, you only have to upload one image or replace it one image, and across all apps your profile image changes. So
you've obviously not put your stuff in there, did he?
Oh yeah.
I didn't even know I had a Roundesk. Do I have a Roundesk?
So you don't. You have a BitPic though, so it's picking up on it. Yeah, because that's just a universal. So yeah, it added one or two concepts like just having a universal profile that you can then pick up. So if you look at the menu again and you jump into
it's overlaying my own little graph, with Kevin Murphy's graph. Yeah. And so this could, on a visual level, give you an idea about whether, if you were working together in a team, whether you'd have all the bases covered or not.
Exactly. So the idea was going to be to develop that exact feature where you could build teams with people and overlay all of your skills to see, if cumulatively you're covered on all of your sort of bases. And this was my biased opinion of what you need to run some sort of Bitcoin business. You need those virtues, I guess, or skill sets to be able to do something successful. Was my opinion, at least.
That's a really cool idea.
It's a really good idea.
Developer API that was specifically to allow people to then tap into this with their apps. Oh, and you would need to sign into that, so don't worry about that. But so the idea is that any app could use the Roundesk node package to bring in that profile information. And the idea was people could log in with their paymail to various different apps, and they would always have that profile. So Lyft, for example, used it. So you could be set as a producer of a particular stream, and then people could jump in and in the Lyft app see all of your Roundesk profile and all of those details. And different apps could focus on different details. And so there's an open field entry for your profile on Roundesk, so you can just add whatever details you want, whether it be job title or, I don't know, preferred animal, spirit animal, or whatever you want.
So does the Lyft app still work then, or is that something you said?
No, it's sort of it might work if you try it, but what my point is, I stopped developing it. It's paused, and I didn't tell anyone about it, and parts of it probably don't work, and so I wouldn't advocate people actually using it right now.
I like the idea though. I do like
yeah, it's one of those things that it's a viable idea. It needs more time, and for a while I was considering, like, I just got to the States, right? So I might start a business and hire developers to continue that. But
I don't think it's something you should give up on, because it's such a big industry.
Yeah,
well, exactly. Yeah, video's everything these days.
Yeah, I have a lot of passion for that industry, and I know people reasonably high up in Vimeo and stuff that we could sort of outsource some of the heavy lifting video component to. And
because they're in London, aren't they, as well? I had a chat with them myself a bit back. They were quite interested in BSV. Yeah, thought Vimeo on BSV, it could actually probably work really well for you, and they were like, oh. So,
yeah, video technology is very high data. It has very high data, with the highest data requirement of sort of any social media, certainly, that I can think of. It's hard though. Like, video is very difficult technology to figure out, and
Deggen, you mentioned hiring developers. So where do you go to hire developers? Where do you find such talent? Roundesk, okay.
Well, certainly I had done that in the past to find people to collaborate with. Yeah, that was the idea originally. It was like, well, I need space to go find good developers or marketers for my business ideas. Other people might need that as well. So yeah, that was the thinking. But otherwise, I'm certain there are other people who have taken on that idea and continue to develop on those products. So I know the person that comes to mind is Rob from the Cambridge MetaNet Society. He's got, is it, oh God, what's it called? Veritas? No? Vianex. Oh God.
Yeah.
Rob is an absolute powerhouse of a human.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have met him, but he's boy genius, genius young man coming out. Cambridge doctorate, and I think he's got the Satoshi what's it called, scholarship twice in a row now. So yeah,
well deserved.
This guy's awesome and so humble. You would never expect it. It's been a while since I had seen him when we went to the Block Dojo, and he was just like, he's just quietly saying how he has a massive team now working for him and has developed 10 different websites. I'm just like, whoa, dude.
I can see it. I go and visit his sort of stable of websites these days, and there's a lot there. My God, and it's growing all the time. It's amazing stuff.
Anyway,
and he gave a presentation too, very well, on the Bitcoin Association. I think that was with you, Deggen. You hosted it with him.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. So he's great. I remember first seeing him in the. That's where I'd go. Sorry, to answer the question, because he's very well connected and knows a lot of the developers. Has a good, group of people that he's worked with, and also on Twitch. Just shout out on Twitch for developers. There's always some great developers that have obviously developed. Twitch itself are sometimes available for freelance hire as well, and so on. So that's where I would go if I was looking for people.
Thank you.
But yeah, when I first met Rob, must have been at London Bitcoin meetup number maybe 2 or 3 that I had done, and he was there, and he just quietly sort of incinerate an idea that had just been sort of talked about on stage, and he would just reveal to them how completely exploitable that technology was. So he was way ahead of everyone, and it was honestly difficult to hear him, and that's the only reason why people.
Well, that's the thing, because he's quite a quiet talker, but he's very funny as well. Anyway, I'm always excited about his developments, but I see you both in the same sort of space, because you're both like continually coming up with new businesses.
Oh, that's very flattering to even be compared, honestly. I don't feel like I'm at the same level, although I would love to be.
No, but you've got the same energy, the same drive, let's just go at it and throw a lot of stuff at the walls, see if any of it sticks. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that you've created, if people came along and picked it up, after you and just invested a bit of money into it and marketing and power and kept on developing it, You could be the next LinkedIn, honestly, with that Roundesk, really.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, with EAS, we did talk to investors who were looking for, and I should say, could well be still going ahead. That there are investors that are looking for not even Bitcoin-related stuff necessarily, but just like construction industry is one where its reputation is really important for getting workers on site with like a on-chain history of what projects they worked on. Maybe it's like a trust system, basically. So there are websites that do that.
That could be massive.
Bringing in the sort of immutable part of Bitcoin to elevate the level of trust in that data, or even using, Nchain technology, Kensei. That would be a good application of it, is trust models for handyman and construction work. So that is a huge potential upgrade for that industry.
Are you allowed to explain a bit about Kensei?
I think so, because it's public.
True.
Yeah, it has a public website. So Kensei, I should say, I don't represent Nchain's marketing interests for Kensei. So actually, maybe I should shut up about that. It's a cool product. Internally, I don't work on it. So all I've seen is what you guys have seen in terms of the, honestly, part of why I got in touch with Nchain. I was like, okay, this wins. That's the best marketing I've ever seen in the industry. Including Twitch, who I love, because previously I think they had the best marketing. But in terms of targeting enterprise clients, I think Kensei is the best marketing so far in the industry.
Yeah, I think memes can only go so far, can't they?
Yes, memes don't convince former Oracle users to switch or whatever.
No. And
so Kensei is all about trustworthy data. How important is the integrity of your data to your business is the question Kensei asks, and the answer most sort of CISOs would answer with is, well, that is the single most crucial element of our entire business, our whole business model. So I think they've touched on exactly the right thing with Kensei. That is what business technologists want, is secure data they can rely on. They know.
No, it's a really good point, because I mean, anytime you make any kind of transactions, or it's the data integrity is everything, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without it, there is no business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've heard that cybersecurity is enabled by BSV. So is there any insight you can share with that, Deggen, to a layperson?
Sure. I'm certainly no cybersecurity expert, but what we were just talking about, Kensei, is the sort of foundation of it, is knowing that your records, or in a cybersecurity sense, you might say your logs, have not been changed. If you know that every interaction on your servers, generally, if we sort of generalize it to any server-based business, which is every business today, pretty much. Certainly anything that serves over the internet. If you keep a track of all changes that are going on in your servers, then you can immediately tell when someone has changed something where they shouldn't have. So I think the general idea of like, well, how does Bitcoin just magically fix this? The magical fix is it's write once, read many. You can not alter records, because my understanding is most cybercrime happens where people go in, do something they're not supposed to, and then delete the evidence of them having done that. And then it becomes very difficult for businesses to be like, wait, what's real and what's not real?
Don't you think it's ironic that this whole case, the Right Climate case, has occurred basically because somebody went in and hacked the servers, Craig's old servers that the old company used to have, changed a bunch of emails, and now there's this $1 trillion case that's come from that. Not being able to prove who made the changes to which emails when, and that's. I mean, he must wish he had Kensei. Yeah,
in the overall pitch.
This is like the fraud. The fraud investigation and stuff. Bitcoin is the thing that actually businesses would benefit from being on. And that's what I kind of understood about it, because obviously I've been hacked and defrauded and stuff over time, and it's such a horrible feeling. And if you're a business, you could lose millions if
even the mere mention that there was a problem could lose you millions in
B2B world. And at least with Bitcoin, there is this trail of evidence that shows you what's changed, when, where it's
done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I do this again is why I kind of advocate for that in the first place, is being really set against hackers and really set against fraud, in the respect that, it can ruin people's lives,
Totally.
So what can we do to prevent those things happening? Or at least if it happens, what can we do to be able to track and trace those people who are committing those crimes in the first place? So I like Sherlock Holmes, so maybe that's where that kind of comes from as well. It's like investigating things until you get down to the exactly.
Yes, got my magnifying glass handy.
He's got all the props.
Now, that is very helpful, Deggen, your explanation, because it seems like it is the immutable record, like you said, where they know what's real and what happened and where it occurred, rather than it is a protection or a shield from that ever happening. So it's not that you're shielded from that ever occurring. It's that if that were to occur, you would have some security in the immutable record.
I'd add what you just said made me realize that there's a paper that Craig wrote a while back about how prevention of crime is better than sort of dealing with afterwards, right? And one way to prevent crime is to make sure that people know that the likelihood of them getting caught is extremely high. And the paper was something along the lines of, if you increase the severity of the punishment, it doesn't make a difference to criminal behavior. But if you increase the likelihood of them being prosecuted, then the behavior changes. So with Bitcoin in mind, if you increase the traceability of all interaction generally, then you're going to reduce crime, because people will believe that they will be caught if they commit any crime. And so that's how you reduce crime. Whereas if you build this anonymous network of people who can send money to one another without ever revealing who they are to anyone, then that would be the opposite, right? That's a system
incentivizes crime.
This is one of the big things in this space as well, which I got straight away, is this, BTC rhetoric of it's untraceable, you can't find it. And I'm like, no. If it's on chain, then surely you can find out who's done what, when, where, and how. And this is a real big problem in the space of misinformation of, well, you can commit crime if you want to by using Bitcoin. No, you can't, because you are going to get found out. And that's a massive thing that I found in that social media kind of space, is that it's been chucked around there all the time, is this misinformation about, well, you actually, if you commit crime, it's not a problem. We can, they're not going to track you and they're not going to get you. And it's like, no, it's completely the opposite way around. Yeah. I mean, actually talking about...
Now, would this be a disruption to the auditing market?
I think it would help auditing.
Would it be competitive, or would it be a new opportunity? Because like you said, with the documents, improving the validity of documents, if everything is on chain with this immutable record and powered by Kenze, then what are the auditors going to do? I guess they just go back and check mark.
Yeah, so the auditors, I think, that exist today are going to be really important in establishing the businesses that do this on-chain auditing, because it's still possible for developers to create software that fakes audits. I mean, who's going to know whether it's actually being checked or not? You need auditors to keep the developers honest and for them to implement the rules correctly. Like I have no idea what the rules are in terms of a specific state's laws on what you need to prove or otherwise. There's going to be different limits of like what you have to disclose and so on and so forth. Like a few pennies transaction, nobody even cares about. But actually, some states in Europe do care about a few pennies. So you do need to report those. So it's going to depend. I mean, the auditor's new job is going to be translating law into code essentially via developers, probably.
Wow.
Code is not law, but you can write code that matches the law of a specific region.
I mean, this is another thing that gets thrown around a lot as well, isn't it? I've heard it loads by certain developers. This code is law, and it's like, no, law is law, and code needs to basically follow the law, because law is still law at the end of the day. You know, I mean, like, you know, I mean, the only law that I know that probably is universal would be nature's law.
But can you imagine what a disaster it would be if coders were allowed to invent the laws?
It would be, it reminds you.
Like when you got like Luke Dash Jr. Or Luke Dash or whatever his name is, you know, in charge of inventing the world's laws. That's a terrifying prospect, frankly.
Yeah, I think it's a short-term marketing slogan. But I saw Daniel Krawitz's video today on an interview, and he said, yeah, code is law for that group until they find a mistake in it, and then it's no longer law.
Or
you know, and I thought, that's a great point.
And says, no, actually, that's not. The law is law. Yeah.
It's a narrative, I think, from them.
Actually, there was a question that I asked you about RelayX and transactions and how you would actually find the RelayX transactions without the activity page. And you kindly said that you would actually help to, you know, kind of show us how we could do that.
So thankfully, like I looked into this before to make sure that my assumptions about it were correct. So I hope that there isn't anything that's drastically different from your particular setup. So I think in the past maybe there may have been a sort of transaction history page. I guess RelayX are absolutely brutal with not having anything there that doesn't make them money. So basically they're not making money from showing you your own history. So that's why they probably are like, why would we design a page for that?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, we spoke to Liam, and he did say that in the past there was that functionality, but at the moment it's not a priority for
Not a priority because it doesn't make them money, which is probably a good thing, honestly. So the first thing I wanted to say about it is you absolutely do have transaction history in your phone app version of the RelayX wallet, if you have it, which would be linked.
Oh yeah,
so for me,
Liam said that, didn't he?
I've got an iPhone. It's a cheap one. It's an SE 2020. But if I go into my iPhone, which
so I'll walk through it here to make sure it's the same. So yeah, so if you go to the menu top left of RelayX, then there's the third item down is transactions, and that is a list of your whole history. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Oh, right. It's not going to work on my desktop that I'm sharing, is it?
Yes. So no, but it's okay. We're going to use your desktop to make sure. Like some people don't have RelayX on their smartphones, so they don't have the history.
Right. So tell me again then. So because I'm in my RelayX on my phone, and now I'm in my account, and what I see is coins, collectibles, and activity. And the activity is grayed out, and it does nothing. So where do I go to find my transaction history?
Oh, maybe you have an old app. Is this what you have when you open RelayX? Maybe I have an old app.
Yeah. You know, that's exactly what I have.
So top left, and you can see it, and desperately poor, and then transactions here. I'll show you the hacky way to do it. So all you would need to do if you wanted to be a low-level RelayX hacker would be take a look at your console log and make a small transaction. So F12.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Great. So if you can make it a little bit wider so we can see.
We like it inspecting source here or something. What are we doing?
So if you click console, which is just under Bing ads, in your bookmarks.
Oh, yeah.
Console. Okay, so we're just going to make a new transaction, and we're going to see if we can find the TX ID in the console. I would assume that RelayX is going to print that to the console, or it'll be in one of these tabs at least. So could you send Diddy 1 penny or something like that from your RelayX wallet, and we'll see what happens in the console, so we can capture a TX ID.
And while you're doing that, actually, I logged out and logged back into my RelayX on my iPhone, and the first page you come to is recommended apps, and actually there's 3 lines at the top. So if I press the 3 lines at the top, then actually there is a picture of me and my amount of sats, send, receive, and transactions. And there is a transaction. So you are right. It's just not where I expected it to be. It's outside of the actual wallet itself. It's in the recommended apps section. Yeah.
So that's how you'd find it if you do have a smartphone in that case.
Okay.
But if you don't, then RelayX isn't a wallet that uses a new key for every transaction. So you can actually gather your entire transaction history just by creating one transaction and looking at the change address to then see your entire history. So that's what we're hopefully going to do just now. Okay. So you see create TX, the second create TX in the console log there.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the script there, open up one and open up a script. Oh, okay, interesting.
Okay, so I've received your 1 penny. Thank you very much, Ruth, for adding a penny to my wallet.
Yes.
Okay, so the address, your address, Ruth, is represented by the uint8 array there. That's a little beyond what I wanted to do right now. So let's take a look at your network panel instead. So where it says console at the top, there's network as well.
Wow.
So there should be a TX ID somewhere in there. So right near the bottom is UTXO.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. And then data. Let's take a look at the data.
Where is data?
So on the right panel, in the preview panel, it's on the right of where your mouse is just now. At the top there, it says code and data.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Into data. Let's see. Okay, it's just interesting. Okay, what about the 1BH? So on the left again. Sorry, this is way hackier than I thought it was going to be. So right at the bottom of this list is the 10.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, balances, collectibles. Balances.
So that might be it.
Okay, so in balances, you see there's a TXID _02. So that's probably a TXID. So if you open up balances, and then the idea is we're going to copy that thing that starts with 58AF. That's almost certainly.
Wow.
Yeah. So these are your UTXOs.
All right.
Whoa.
So if we look at, if we just copy the 58, yeah, and then go to what's on chain. There's a really roundabout way of doing it, obviously, but I thought you guys would get a kick out of this.
Definitely.
What's on chain?
How I could spell. Is it .com?
No, it's great to see what's on chain being used.
I mean, as a developer, I use it every single day.
Wow.
So what do I just type?
Paste in there and just remove the last 3 characters.
Oh,
That's an output. So I doubt it will come up. Let's see if that exists as a transaction. It does. There we go. So I suspect your address is the top left one there. So we just click the input 1, 5 outputs, the 1KXEREB.
What you saying there?
So the list on the right.
Here.
Yeah. The list on the left is your inputs. So if you click that, that is one of your addresses in your wallet. So let's see, does it have lots of transactions?
It does have balance 0.001.
Yep.
Which sounds about right, does it?
So probably not actually, but if we go to the previous transaction, we can follow back through your history. So the way you go to the previous transaction is to click on the thing that's after via at the very bottom left of your screen. So it says like total input. So the via 21 or via 15FF, that's where the money is coming from. So there are sort of previous transactions. Yeah, you can click on that. Yeah, any of them. So what we're looking for is just a pattern of using the same address. So
I see. So
run.
Okay.
And if so, do you see what I mean when I say there are two inputs to this transaction? There's sort of line 1 and line 2 on the left there.
Yeah.
So if we look closer at the second one, in fact, they have the same transaction as their input. So it says via 1E5F.
Yeah.
So
it's like
that's
a
the previous
site
transaction.
test. This. Yeah.
I know, that's why I
you
have
can look
this
at the
on.
previous transaction to that by clicking the same thing in the same position, which is 8B4001. So you're going through your history here. And hypothetically, if you just kept doing that, you would find all of the transactions associated with that address. And my understanding is that RelayX uses the same address for the same user. So that's kind of like your username.
Oh, so it's not giving us a new address for every transaction like MoneyButton does.
It's not.
Or Handcash does.
And because it uses that same address, you can actually use the What's Unchain API to look up the entire history of all transactions that use that address. So if you had to, for accounting reasons, that's how I would go about it. And
so this is like going back up the chain. Yeah, that's a nightmare. I mean, I could understand it if you were trying to like track down some expenditure of money that was a big amount of money that was fraud was committed. You're saying that would be one way to do it.
Yeah, so that would be what the auditors would have to do anyway.
Yeah, that's what the auditors would have to do.
Presumably they'd write some software that would pull that out for them.
So yes, so this doesn't exist for MoneyButton either, by the way, like the ability to audit your own transactions. That's part of the motivation behind Sinavera. So in sinavera.com, all of your transactions you can download with a single button press into an accountant-friendly format. So that was one of the main motivators for it.
Yeah, that is definitely needed.
So that was born out of the fact that, so I developed Baymail and I had 70,000 transactions, which were mostly for testing Baymail. And I gave those to my accountant. It took me like 5 days to just accumulate all the data and put it into a CSV. And I gave those to my accountant, and his response was, I am not going to check this.
No shit.
It was like, yep.
Wasn't that like all fractions of a penny as well or something?
Yeah, they were all between 1 and 3 cents. Yeah.
So
how to annoy your accountant.
Yeah, he absolutely, like every accountancy firm hates me, and the ones that I've used anyway. Anyway, but that should all be easy from now on.
Well, that was like terrifying. I mean, I think you were trying to like show us how to do something there, but now I'm just afraid of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I mean, I kind of did follow what you were saying, but it's nonetheless, it's not exactly user friendly, is it?
But it's a really good kind of lesson to be learned as well. And I really appreciate that you've showed us how to do that, because if there is any point in the future, I do need a reference who does want to audit everything. At least we know that there is an alternative way of being able to do it. And I agree with you as well. One of the things that is really needed, and I think, I mean, I'm not sure how you would do it in Handcash at a minute, but one of the things that's really needed is literally one single click of a button and all your transactions are downloaded onto a file. So that then you can give that to your accountant and they can do whatever they want with it. But at least every transaction is there. And that's an easy way of exporting.
It's needed though, isn't it? I mean, this is the thing,
So the 70,000 transactions, what I had to do was use a third-party service that is a general crypto solution for this problem. It's called Coinly, so Koinly. And it's reasonably expensive. But if you have that many transactions and you're worried that you're going to go to jail, then this is a good solution. It's a couple of $100, and you literally just give them an extended public key. So in other words, you give them, your 12 words, backup codes.
That's a very high trust thing to do, isn't it?
Right. Well, no, you don't give them those. Obviously not. No, because you're basically giving them your money. So what you can do is, how would you even do this as a non-developer? It would be very difficult. But you can ask someone to build a tool that takes those 12 words and gives you what's called an extended public key, which is how all of your addresses are generated. And this would work for MoneyButton as well, even though they use a new address per transaction. And you just give that XPub, which is it's secure to give them that. It will give them your whole history, but it won't allow them to spend any money or anything like that. And it allows them to use third-party APIs like what's Nchain and pull out all of the UTXOs associated with your account, all of the transactions. They'll use the exchange rate at the time of the transaction associated with that transaction. So in your local currency, you know how much you're actually sending, whether it be 3 pence or, you know, $1, depending on where you are in the world kind of thing. It would do that appropriately. And then just give you a massive PDF that you can then just hand to your accountant, and they can be like, I don't know what to do with this. But at least from a tax point of view, it's...
No, but it's a good point, though, because a lot of these businesses that are developing for BSV are coming out with these massive transaction histories, aren't they? Because a lot of it is dealing in pennies.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something, this is a problem that needs solving, isn't it?
An opportunity.
Do you think this is why they haven't, like, you know, money buttoning, so they haven't looked at it, like, you know, from a user's point of view, because there is this solution that actually would cost the user some, you know, a couple of $100, but it actually is just, that's probably why they haven't looked at it yet? Or do you think there is going to, I mean, hopefully there's further developments in the future that's going to address this issue, but do you think?
If I was responsible for Money Button, would I develop that tool? Yeah, and I would just charge people for it, probably. Why did they not do it? I honestly don't think that the focus of management is to improve Money Button. I honestly can't imagine that that's what they're trying to do. I think they're probably trying to generate revenue through exchange. And so all of their sort of efforts will probably be directed at that rather than making it easier for you to account for your Bitcoin transactions.
As a Money Button user, that is something that you really want. You want to be able to download all those transactions instead.
Or move to Senior Vera.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, Deggen. We do have an account with Senvera now.
I mean, there are a lot of people that use Money Button, and the fact, you know, there are some big transactions that go through that as well. And it, you know, okay, you might have them in your Money Button wallet as individual transactions, but it is really needed to be able to have that one-click button and download everything, you know. And the fact that they're not addressing that is, it's a real shame. I think that puts people off using, you know, in a sense, probably might put people off using that service. In that respect. But I mean, are we allowed to talk about the wallet?
Senior Vera, yeah, it's public now. I mean, at the time when we first spoke, it wasn't, I don't think, but yeah, I think so.
I do think Ray had a question, though. Didn't you?
It was about the What's on Chain API. I just didn't realize there was an API for that. And is it free to use?
It is, yeah. So my understanding is that Tal bought it. They sort of acquired What's on Chain, and so it is certainly a sort of industry for Bitcoin SV. It's an industry preferred API to use for all sorts of things. So you can get UTXO endpoints where you give just a script in hex, and you can pull the sort of history of all unspent transactions to that particular script. So not just an address, but any arbitrary script. And you can, you can do all sorts of things there. I think they even have a Merkle-proof endpoint. In my experience, not all of the Merkle proofs are there yet. And I think that's the next challenge that they will face, and people who are building applications on Bitcoin will generally face, is, who is responsible for storing Merkle proofs? And will there be services specifically for that calculate Merkle proofs for all of the transactions and store them so that you can then look them up? How many people are actually going to check the Merkle proofs of inputs before they accept them as payment? Because no one does it at the moment, So, yeah, I think it's a super handy API.
Yeah, it'd be very useful.
Yeah. And it sort of goes hand in hand with merchant API, which is more about sort of spending. But certainly from a user's perspective, if you're building like user-facing apps, you'll use merchant API to sort of send new transactions that the application is making. And what's Unchain, certainly in things like Sinuvera, is used as sort of like a backup, because sometimes, say, Merchant API, which is talking directly to Tal or Gorilla Pool or whoever it is you want to send your transactions to. The problem is that, for example, you only get one Merkle-proof callback from that. So when you send a transaction, we wait until it goes into a block, and once that block is confirmed, they will send you a Merkle-proof proving that they included it in that block. And that's a one-time thing, but those are really precious to people who are going to need to send those funds on to other people. So if you miss it, if your service is down and you miss the callback, they only send it once. Yeah, there's a Merkle proof. Perfect. Yay. Or there's a Merkle root, at least.
Yeah, root. So is that not the same as SPV?
Is what not the same? Well,
I mean, I'm just thinking about a family tree.
They use, yeah.
That style of a root or a tree.
Yeah, so that's a binary tree, and it is different from DAG, very slightly.
Is different. Okay.
Yeah, but so a binary tree is almost like the opposite shape, and it's always two. So in the DAG, it's single parent, multiple children, whereas I kind of conceptualize a binary tree as the opposite way around. There's always two that goes into one, and that's the next two that go into one, and so on. So
and that's the chain. That's the links of the chain, right?
This would be a great art project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Binary trees are simple in comparison to directed acyclic graphs, which can be very complicated. More like, I remember talking to the Nchain guys saying, like, it's like a shrubbery. It's not a tree. It's a tangle.
Right. Oh.
A shrubbery.
A shrubbery. Yeah,
yes. Exactly. Just in time for Christmas.
I love the fact that you use kind of nature to describe everything as well.
Everyone knows what a shrubbery is. Oh, well, maybe not, but at least it's something tangible. Whereas I feel like binary trees and DAGs are meaningless to most people, although technically accurate.
Yeah.
Difficult to imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, you did mention briefly Signavera.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So Signavera is a new web wallet that you can use not only at signavera.com, but also you can self-host the software. You just need to get in touch with the guys at ELAS. So like the MetaNet ICU has their own hosted wallet. You can have that for example, I have it at wallet.deggen.com. And so I would use that as an implementation that I'm running myself. And so I can have whatever dk@deggen.com as my paymail kind of thing.
This sounds a lot like what Ryan X. Charles was talking about the other week.
It's so in line with what he's talking about. We were just a few months ahead. No, I'm just kidding. We used his technology essentially to build Sinuvera, because we used BSV2 library, which then became Open SPV, which is what he's now building his services on. It's the same libraries used in a very similar way. I have to get in touch with Ryan, and we can definitely talk about those things. I'm very excited.
Yeah, same time zone now.
So it seems like everything's being centered around somebody's identity.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's sort of like
all
having
the apps become yours,
but running on your server that's running on your domain. Or you could outsource the ELAS model with Sinuvera is ELAS write the software, but then you run it on your domain. And you don't need to be very technical to do that. There's a couple of sort of setup requirements. There's no more complicated than setting up your own email service. Right. You need to put in a few records on your domain, but that's what guarantees that you're in control, because you set it up. It's your database, so you have all the data of all your transactions, rather than Moneybutton having it. And so, and you can
will this solve the problem of keeping records of your transactions as well? Then
Yeah, and it puts it into the right hands, I think. So no one else is responsible for you reporting your taxes. You are. So you should keep that data. And that goes for any data that you sort of post to chain. The problem with that model is that when you're putting stuff on Bitcoin, what you're actually doing is publishing stuff to a blockchain. But the way you see it is you say, hey, what's on chain? Can I please have the data at this transaction? And then the browser pulls in the data through some API, and then you see the image. But you're actually viewing an image that came from what's on chain, or what are the other guys who are doing this are, I can see his face, but I can't remember the company name, Matterpool. Or Matter Cloud is their version of this, where it's hosted on their servers. Yes, originally it went on blockchain, but it's coming from their servers. So it's not really, ironically, it's not really on chain, but it is what is on chain. So actually that's a pretty good name, right? So they're serving what's on chain, and they can prove that it was on chain with the Merkle proofs and stuff like that. But yeah, fundamentally, if you have your own mini what's on chain that's only your transactions that you can view, that's the proper model. Yeah. So that means you have your data, you can control who can see it and who can't, and you can write it in a way where you can prove that it was you that published it without revealing it to people that you don't want to see it. So that's how you should host your Instagram, your Insta pics, and your music and your video streams, and that's how I'm totally aligned with Ryan. And I think that is the future. You have control over your own domain. You share with the people you like. You don't have to share with everyone, and you don't have to listen to anyone that you're not interested in. You curate your own content in that way. So,
but it requires a lot more taking responsibility, doesn't it? It's like you've got to get involved. You can't like outsource that to anyone.
Well, you can outsource as much as you want. It's just the degree is under your control, right? So if you don't trust yourself to keep your keys, then outsource to someone who can write software that can help you do that yourself. Or if you want, use a service that will take custody of your keys for you if you don't trust your own technical skills. That's nothing wrong with that. Know your own sort of strengths and weaknesses.
This is the thing that then would, for example, like I said earlier about Facebook, the reason I hate Facebook is because of all this kind of harassment that I got. If this would actually stop that from happening as well.
Well, it wouldn't stop it from happening, I think, because humans are humans. So people will want to harass you wherever you are, but you will at least have control over your digital borders, so to speak. So you can shut down any attention that you don't want, and you can curate who you allow to come into your domain and comment on your content, right? Because it's literally hosted by you. Even the comment section can be hosted by you, and whether or not it displays up there is up to you because it's your content. You're publishing it.
Yeah. So it gives you more control over everything.
It does, yeah. So we want, I think we want that control, but we also want to be connected to each other. So there's like, we're going to need some tools to do that. I figure that's what Ryan's working on, right? That's not an easy problem to solve. We need some sort of tool to, I mean, and partly Roundesk was trying to do this as well. So you can press the connect button in Roundesk. The problem with it is that it's still hosted in roundesk.com rather than your own domain. So you need to sort of run versions of this software that can speak to each other. And there's going to be paymail protocols that allow you to friend each other so that you appear on each other's lists in something like, if you're going to your friends page on Facebook, it would be like going to your friends page on your own website. And that is going to pull content from other people's websites into your web view. Something like that is what I imagine happening. And the person's website is controlling whether or not your website even gets the data from them based on who they are.
Yeah.
You don't have to publish to everyone. You publish to a set group of people, and it's completely under your control. We just need to build the UI for controlling that. Like conceptually, I think it's there now. It exists. Ryan spoke it into existence when he said, and not just Ryan, right? Ryan's thoughts are a result of processing what Twitch have been talking about for ages and what Craig's been talking about for 10 years. And, you know, it's all what this group of people has been talking about for years. And, you know, all of those thoughts are kind of coming together, and it just needs to resolve into a few key tools that we can then use to build this new and prosperous
alternate internet, really, yeah.
Next gen, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the past was just a beta test.
Right.
A very
Now we're getting down
long-running,
to
very big
business.
one.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
it's incredible. I mean, it's kind of mind-bending, really, isn't it? It's turning everything on its head, really. But hopefully putting all the power and control back where it belongs with the autonomous individual that controls it. So
Yeah, I hope we can soon arrive at that point where we have this set of tools, everyone starts using them, and everyone thinks, what did we do before this?
yeah.
You know, when it just feels natural, I think that's when you know you got it just right.
Perfect.
Yes, and I think that's also what does excite me about Bitcoin are the people, the individuals, and the power of the individual and creative mind, and also then the collaboration together. And then in the world, we are all connected. So why not, you know, send some duros or ding some dong, as Satoshi used to say. Right? It's exciting. So, Deggen, we are very grateful that you joined us today. We adore you, and we're well impressed as well with the many seedlings that you've sprouted of various businesses. And also, thank you for teaching us about many interesting concepts and being open to brainstorming with us. So we look forward to cheering you on and speaking with you again soon. And hopefully being all together in person at a meetup where we can onboard our friends and start using Baymail more and more.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for hosting me. And yeah, I appreciate the conversation and flattery. I think you guys are doing a great job of just having interesting conversations, and looking forward to the next episode. Thanks so much for having me.